My name is Dorey. I'm an occupational therapist at the Neighborhood by Tiger Place, which is an inpatient rehab facility. I went to school at MU, and I grew up here. Really good to see you.
It's good.
Okay, and and how I found out about the soul seat.
Tell me what you had the soul seat for at your workplace for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little about what that was like.
So I already knew about the soul seat, obviously, through Hannah and you, and we thought it was a great idea to bring it into an environment with a whole bunch of therapists, because we do seated stuff all the time about posture and alignment and all those kinds of things. So, of course, everyone's first reaction to everything is like, what is that? And that's so strange, and that's weird, and just in a society that judges something before we do it. And so I would just be like, well, you should get on it and see what you think. And a lot of people were like, wow, this is great. And I love folding my legs. People love being in this kind of posture, but you can't do that in a regular chair. And so it's just a more comfortable way. And our secretary, actually, people were fighting over it at one point, because there was only one in 20 of us. And so everyone's like, oh, it's my turn to sit in it, and I want to do my notes in it. And it was always taken constantly. It was nice because I always got to be like, well, it's technically mine, so I should be able to sit in it. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about from your perspective about fascia, and why do people say, well, my body won't do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that people, since they're not as prone to stretching, a lot of people work out, but they'll skip the stretching part, pre and post. And we, as therapists, implement that a lot. You should really stretch before we do this kind of exercise. Or, we massage them before they exercise. And they, afterwards, they're like, oh, yeah, I feel a lot better. I feel looser, I feel more comfortable. And I think that since we're in a society where we're, at a desk like this all the time, they're like, oh, my body won't do that, because physically they can't do it because their bodies are so tight. But I don't think that's something they can't work up to. And I think that once they get in it, they might be a little... I know that some of the poses, some of the girls couldn't do because they were just so tight, with their pelvis and everything.
These are other physical, occupational therapists on the soul seat.
Yeah,
okay.
There was a couple of positions where oh, man, that's a stretch I haven't felt before, or something like that. And it just shows us that, we don't take care of our bodies the way we should, and we don't stretch. And fascia is something that, it connects from your ear all the way down to your pinky toe and everywhere in between. And it's funny, because when I first started school, fascia was something that was oh, that's hocus pocus stuff.
Seriously?
Yeah, because it was oh, this is some weird hippie kind of thing, And I knew that fascia was a thing, because when we did our cadavers, you would see it. But the whole implying that if you stretch it or if you manipulate it, that you get this more flexibility, that was hocus pocus when I first started school. But then at the very end of school, they're like, oh wait, maybe this is something that we should be teaching in our schools now. So at the end of the school year, we started learning about it and how to manipulate it and certain stretches to do. So it's such a new kind of thing, and I think people are just now becoming aware of the situation.
Yeah. So what if I use the word floor culture, does that describe something that's...
Yeah.
Does it really? Am I using that right, correctly?
Well, I think floor culture... Well, for me, it's really personal, because that's how I grew up. And so in Korea, we're on the floor constantly. And in America, you're not. And people... It's funny, because actually, just the other night, I had a whole bunch of friends over, and I don't really have a lot of couch space at my house, and they were all filled up on the couches, and I was actually sitting on the floor and just playing around. They're like, Tina, you should, we can move over. And I'm like, actually, I'm more comfortable down here, and it feels good down here, and I'm not doing bad with that. And I think I love the soul seat so much. Maybe that's how I should word it. Is because it really does improve people's postural alignment, for one. You're forced to sit with a better pelvic tilt and an upright spine in this kind of chair than a regular chair. That's one of the big things that I noticed about it. Another thing is that my grandma, who's 85, and I grew up, with a floor culture, isn't afraid to get off the floor and get back up. She does it constantly every day, and my mom is the same way, you know, and I think that they're not nearly as afraid to fall either, like as being an older adult. We're here, since I work with older adults, people are terrified about, you know, falling, and even when I'm like, well, let's do an exercise where you get on the floor, pretend you've fallen and get back up, that terrifies them.
Wow.
Where my grandma's just like, well, that's not weird, like I sit on the floor all the time, you know? And so, yeah, I think that, so that was the second thing. And the third thing is as a therapist, we tell people positionally, if we have a spinal cord injury or someone that can't get up, what do we do in the hospital? We reposition them every 15 minutes.
Ooh, wow.
Mm-hmm. We talk about going on the side and like then laying them on their other side, laying, you know, and getting them in different positions, because it's not good for your body to be in one position constantly. And so this really promotes that constant movement, which is great, because you don't want to sit in a chair for 8 hours a day. And even just, I feel like it promotes even standing a lot easier too. It's like, you know, you have to reposition to get comfortable, and that's a good thing. And so I think those are like the three major reasons why I love the soul seed.